about Labor and its costings, they put it off till Thursday because tomorrow night is when all of the TV and radio ads end. I understand that internet ads can still remain and you can still put stuff inside a newspaper, so we're still playing by the rules of the 1980s. But Labor's costings are being put off to a time when, hopefully, unless you see the news, you won't know any details of it. James, this is very deliberate and a very deliberate tactic to try to get under the wire. They say, well, Tony Abbott did it. Well, I can tell you who didn't do it, Bill Shorten. And the entirety of Labor's 3 years was whatever Shorten do, let's do the opposite. But I think they'll get the same result.
Paul, this is a transparent attempt to avoid transparency, to avoid disclosing to the Australian people how much they're going to spend and how much they're going to tax. What is it that they want to hide from the Australian people? And particularly, what is it they're trying to hide from the millions of people who have or need to vote early and will vote in the coming days? By the time Labor's costings are out there, a significant proportion of the electorate would have voted and will not have the benefit of that information. This is a naked attempt to avoid legitimate scrutiny in an election campaign. And I think we can only draw negative conclusions from it. I think it inevitably means they must be blowing out budget deficits well into the future, or it must be that they have secret increased taxes to pay for their increased spending. There really can be no other answer as to why they are holding this off so late and so long and hoping they can avoid that scrutiny in the last couple of days.
Well, and Chris, they're going to try to put tens of billions of dollars in off budget. This is where the NBN lives. But of course, unless you have an increase in revenue, it's all still on the credit card.
Oh, yeah, this is a great ploy. With NBN spending and electricity transmission spending, they just spend billions of dollars off budget, call it an investment. But of course, who pays for that? The consumers have to pay for that. That investment is recouped. We just pay for it in another way. It's extraordinary. One thing I hope that Anthony Albanese gets asked at the National Press Club tomorrow is a question I don't think we've heard enough about during this campaign, and that is that Labor have committed to having another budget before the end of this year. If Anthony Albanese is Prime Minister next week, they will have another budget later this year. Why do they need another budget? What spending are they going to cut? What taxes are they going to increase? If they're not doing either of those two things, they don't need another budget. There's some sinister reason Labor wants another budget this year, and they haven't been pressed on it at all.
Well, and we all know how the cycle goes. Oh, look, it's so much worse than we expected, so insert this and insert that. I mean, you know the game that's coming. But, of course, don't forget here, James, as I pointed out, the Greens are the co-pilots. The Greens have told us up front what their expectation is. If it's a minority government, then it's what the Teals demand, and that is major changes, all of which, and even if it was Labor in a majority, which I don't believe it'll be, you still get a push-up in inflation and a push-up in interest rates. Would you bet your house on Albo? Hell no.
You're absolutely right about that, Paul, and I'll come back to that in a second. But just on that blame game, well, the whole reason why Peter Costello introduced the Charter of Budget Honesty, the reason why we now have a Parliamentary Budget Office and independent costing processes is to avoid that. That need not happen. But it requires both political parties to equally participate in that. Now, we've submitted our policies for costings and we have released our costings transparently and openly for the Australian people. Both parties, whether you're in government or opposition, have equal access to this system. The Labor Party hasn't submitted or released a single policy for costing yet. So they are trying to avoid this scrutiny and we have to hold them to that. But you're absolutely right. If this is a hung parliament, and I think there's a very high risk that it will be, then whatever Albo's plan to spend, you can add plus to that. You can add the Greens agenda to that. You can add any Teals that are elected agenda to that, or the current independents who will be bargaining very hard with Anthony Albanese to get what they want in there. And some of them have some pretty kooky ideas. And it'll be Labor not just delivering their own policies, but a whole lot more than that. So I really worry whether the Australian taxpayer can bear the cost of a hung parliament and an Albanese government. I think it'll be a very high cost indeed.